I was being told by everyone that Ruler was supposedly the best AD carry in this tournament coming into the tournament. I didn't believe so, but everyone said so. And everyone was saying SSG bot lane is very, very, very good and they're always carrying every game. And I played against them and I didn't feel like that. And I saw the games against RNG and against FB and they're not very impressive to me, so I was disappointed.
Strong words from Zven there. Welcome back to the stage in Wuhan, where it's time for a fight between the EU LCS champions G2 Esports and last year's finalists in Samsung Galaxy. First up, our analysts will tell us who they think will destroy the Nexus and why.
Well, Jat already called me up, so I'm going to stand strong, and I'm going to say G2. And the reason why is that G2 have proven against RNG that they don't need to go to 5v5 to win a game. That if they have Tristana, they're actually just that good at taking down towers, opening up the map, and clinching that victory before late game becomes a factor. And I think that's where Samsung are scary, in the mid to late game.
I think your formulation before the break, where you stole a bit of time and got a prediction in there, and now it's not incorrect by any means. At the end of the day, I really do think that G2 and Samsung overlap in a lot of... There's a but coming.
Always.
They do overlap in a lot of styles, but what I know about Samsung and what I have to trust about Samsung, assuming Ambition is playing here, we actually haven't had official confirmation, but I'll assume so, is that they can pull out and extend any game. They are very good at doing that. The RNG game last week that people will throw up as a counterpoint was atypical. That does not happen to Samsung with any regularity. So with faith in the process, with faith in how they can extend games, the style they like to play, and how there is overlap in styles, I do think Samsung wins here. I do think they can pull it late. And I didn't take away anything from the first game because Samsung are known very much for hiding strategies, for having very good preparation. They did not have to show much against 1907 Fenerbahce, short of a Malzahar pick. So I do think they can take the win here against G2.
I've got some questions, but I want to hear from Jad first.
I mean, logical consistency from the start of the day to now doesn't need to be the case.
No.
Frost Current flip-flopped. I am a natural-born flip-flopper as well. So I saw so much out of G2 that answered questions from week one off of that game. Zven, we just heard, was confident he was a better AD carry than Ruler. I agree with that. Papa Smithy actually agrees with that as well because you ranked him higher on the top 20 list.
Sure.
And when we saw G2 do a better mid to late game today, it means they can do it forward. Now, this is potentially too much hype. I feel like order has been restored to the universe where the Korean analyst picks Korea, and the young, like, other people decide to just say, you know what? Let's go with G2. They won a game. Yeehaw, because they're 2-2, right? They have not been in control. Week one doesn't matter at this point. I think we saw that yesterday, that if you get momentum on a day, you can carry it through.
So all things equal, Papa Smithy, we're 45 minutes in, 6 items on everybody. Team fight breaks out. You're more confident in Samsung's ability to navigate that team fight.
9 times out of 10, absolutely.
I'm more confident for that.
What about them makes you more confident, though, if we're looking at an AD carry-driven meta, and we've just announced that we think the G2 AD carry is better?
Zven might be a better AD carry, and that's, of course, a holistic thing. I think in terms of early laning phase, he's been cleaner this year. In late-game teamfights, Ruler usually is solid gold. He can pull things out, but the 45-minute teamfight is not just are you left-clicking or right-clicking on the right thing. There's more to it than that. It's still a mixed-language G2 roster. Having great communication and ambition is the cornerstone of Samsung's communication, is going to be important for them in the late fights, and that's why, in that scenario, which we may not see, but in that scenario, Samsung every time.
I don't think it gets to a 45-minute team fight. I think G2 is the early game team that can play the late game strategies. If they can control the Tristana and get that Lulu lane again, I think they win.
All right,
that's so much about the draft right here. But
a lot of ifs here. A lot of conditionals.
There you have it. A couple predictions from the analysts. We'll see which of these teams can strengthen their position as we leave it to the casters for picks and bans.
Oh, I love the energy and the passion. We'll find out who predicts correctly. Gentlemen, we're about to jump into picks and bans. Samsung Galaxy are on the blue side, and they've just come off a Samsung-esque win, if ever we've seen it. G2, on the other hand, maybe a little bit more confidence building as they took down RNG, which was a more difficult opponent. So CuVee, where do we look to for picks and bans as we're about to jump in?
I think they're right with looking towards the bottom lane. That really does determine a lot how, the first turret goes down, and with that goes the early game.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of a draft G2 look to focus on. For me, I want to see Expect on a tank once again. I know we've been seeing him last week play on a lot of carry-style top laners, things like the Trundle, the Gnar, but I think he's just much better when he's just put on a front line, and it perhaps forces CuVee into matching it. And given the talent that you have in the top lane for Samsung, you don't want to be playing carry against carry.
No, definitely not. And we heard Mithy in the interview earlier today talking about how much they trust and believe in Trix Engage, and it worked out so exceptionally well on that Sejuani. Of course, expect how the follow-up with the Cho'Gath. We jump into picks and bans for Game 3 here in Group C. And it's important to note that G2 Esports are in control of their own destiny. If they win out, it increases their likelihood of at least forcing a tiebreaker at a minimum baseline. We'll see how the results pan in because it's Jarvan and Kalista off the board.
Now, just to remind people once again, Kalista, the reason why she's banned all the time is because she has so many good lane matchups, she synergizes great with so many different supports, and she's just really good at providing engage, peel for her own support, and it's just an all-round
Objective control, good
amazing
regarded sensor, yeah, the list goes on.
Just
right?
to remind people why she is so often banned, but the surprising thing about the bans is the fact that Samsung are banning away Jarvan on the blue side, just like they did earlier on, rather than forcing G2 to invest one of their bans there.
Close up their bans, their videos with the Rakan. And on the side of G2, one option left. Sejuani, definitely something that's up and available.
Galio is a big risk to leave open. You can see the respect from Perkz towards ground. One of his most comfortable picks is also that Galio.
Yeah, a lot of the roaming ones taken out so far with the Talia, but Sejuani gonna join Gragas in the ban phase here, and that does kind of, as we've seen previously, raise the priority on things like Rek'Sai, but Trick already may have other ideas.
I'm thinking something like the Rek'Sai would be very good for Trick. You pair that up with a Galio as well, but Ivern is another pick that we saw in week 1 that we may very well see brought out by G2 as well.
What is the little, is that a Grim? A Grim or a Grimace?
For me, Ivern is a far inferior Ardent Sensor user than Janna. She can apply it to your whole team very early on with just her ultimate. So I would almost never, actually I would never pick Ivern if Janna's available.
Why not pick them both, Kobe?
You are going way too deep down the rabbit hole.
That is definitely a Grimace this time round. It is the Janna and the Kog'Maw locked in. His Mithy on your screen is scratching his chin. Now these two teams, of course, not as much time to adapt. On the side of Samsung Galaxy, they've had around 10, 15-minute tops after their previous game. Ruler's going to be locking in the Twitch. He needs to outperform his 98 damage per minute, which is what he did against RNG last week.
Easy goals. These are obtainable goals, you know, actionable items. This is good.
And with the Twitch, the focus will definitely be on the AD carries this game. Kog'Maw coming out for Zven, Ruler bringing out the Twitch. It's going to be in those late game fights, the positioning and how quickly they can tread through those front lines.
Oh yes, the Twitch versus Kog'Maw late game. This is one for the ages. Both will be buffed up. Both have front lines already. So, you know what? Let's just go into this with 3-man compositions for each side. This is basically all you need, boys.
Now, what typically we see in this part of the draft is a focus on junglers, but Samsung went for an early Cho'Gath, and G2 said, we want a top laner. So what they could do is ban away a few extra junglers and then pinch the pool even more, and then first rotate their jungler, and then give Perkz the counter pick later on.
Definitely looking at some warrior junglers creeping in here. So already going to find Rek'Sai on the ban table, and we get to delve a little bit deeper into the pools that what have these guys been practicing? Ambition, of course, we already saw the Kha'Zix last game, and that's definitely still an option for them, but they could switch it up even more.
All right, 8 seconds left on phase 2 here, ban 2 for G2. Gonna take away the Cassiopeia, so setting themselves up potentially a mid lane pick. I mean,
Corki, Syndra, Orianna, probably all on the high priority list for Perkz. He's very comfortable on them both, on all of them, and Ryze is another big pick in the mid lane. But Galio still available for Samsung. Still a big risk, giving that mid laner over to Crown.
Yeah, Galio or Corki both could be big here. Galio obviously going to give them a lot more stability for the team fights with the large area he can control, and especially since we're thinking that Ambition would go back to the Kha'Zix, that would make a lot of sense, but the Corki can definitely put out a decent amount of damage.
Is this the Nunu game? Just thinking about some of the junglers that have been banned away, Kog'Maw, focus on to Trick. I think it's always a risk, especially against a high damage jungler in the form of Kha'Zix, but you look at the jungle pool and you can see it's been very pinched very hard.
Yeah, I'm personally not a fan of Nunu right now. I only play him when he's extremely overpowered and has huge win rate gains, and that is not the case.
To be fair, you're never a fan of Nunu, Kobe. However,
Exactly.
However,
Sometimes I will play him, though.
let's see. Tanky jungler Zach, something Trick has played in the past. What else is in the pool if they don't lock this in? Because it's a difficult scenario when you see all the picks and bans and making their way all the way down. Feels like this might actually be the case.
I feel like they're being forced into getting an engage from somewhere, so by drafting the Zac, they at least have a way to start fights. But with some recent nerfs to Zac, he gets very low in the jungle, and with some of the wave clear that Samsung have and the pressure they can get from their lanes, it could give the ability for Ambition to get in a lot of invades and force Trick out of his own jungle.
Also, won't be the easiest for him to camp around mid lane, as that's what we see very often from successful Zac games, trying to use that fog of war and the multiple angles that they could try and camp mid. But Galio actually very good wave clear and doesn't have to expose himself too much.
You've also got to look at all the magic damage on the side of G2. Maokai, Zac, Ryze, and even Kog'Maw all heavily invest in just dealing that magic DPS. So you can invest in things like the adaptive helm, which when you pick on a Galio who has the magic shield, you have the damage reduction, and you have the adaptive helm, Kog'Maw really struggles to get through that front.
What you're trying to say is there are options here for Samsung Galaxy that are very beneficial, and of course they will get their opportunity to do so unless G2 can find some of those early game advantages that we've seen them do all throughout Worlds. This is the second Zac that we've seen here at the World Championships in 2017, and the last time that Trick played it himself was during the course of the playoffs against Splice, so not too long ago. A lot of options on the side of G2 as far as the engage goes, and now my eyes are going to be on Ambition. What can he do on this Kha'Zix? Will he have any sort of early game impact? Does he even want to? Does he need to? Those are questions we're going to answer soon enough.
Well, Kha'Zix definitely has priority over Zac early on in the game, can pretty much run wherever he wants to with this. We'll see.
And Kobe, we will see indeed Samsung Galaxy taking on G2 Esports. And this is do or die for G2. As I mentioned, they control their own destiny. If G2 lose this game, they will need RNG to lose to 1907 Fenerbahce to force a tiebreaker scenario. So if G2 want a shot at playoffs, they need to control their destiny, and they want to win out today. That is what is on the line, Kobe.
A lot of magic resistance coming through and other runes from all of the members here on Samsung as well. Really good point that you brought up, Vitus and Champ Select, that we were going to have to return to for the duration of this game, because it is a very magic damage heavy profile here from the G2 squad. And on the analyst test, they had the concerns about what it would look like if this game went very late. That would definitely compound the problem. So we shall see how the early game goes, and if Ambition, actually does get something started early. Typically, Haru's the more early game oriented guy, and Ambition would play it a bit slower.
And I just look at these late game fights, and it is so scary if you're G2 Esports, because you have the Galio, the Cho'Gath, an insane frontline. You have backline threat with Ambition, who can then bring the frontline to the backline of Galio too. Let's see how this early game starts off, though.
He got 4 of them!
4 chickens! That's not a chicken fight anymore.
What is it?
I don't know, but Perkz won it.
Chicken nugget grab bag!
It's a
Perkz got them all!
Well, that was a very cheeky start here for Perkz. Very early level 2, obviously. It's just a very small confidence booster.
Boom, early game. G2 out to a great start.
It is going to put Ambition behind a little bit, but it's going to give a bigger advantage over to Perkz, already taking a second point in his W, which means that he will just now zone Crown away from the farm and try and put back one of Crown's most comfortable and one of his most successful mid laners during the regular season of LCK.
Yeah, fantastic on that champion, and the ability to react may be pivotal coming up against G2 Esports. And of course, the last time these two teams met was when Trick ran that Ivern. They had Expect on that Shen in the top lane. You can see the game was fairly even for a long time. But once we hit 20 minutes, much like the very previous game, Samsung just ran away with that performance. They took over the late game, Vegas.
It was literally 2 fights that pretty much won the game for SSG. It was a relatively close one around the Baron area, and then it was one decided one in G2's own jungle. The bottom lane is struggling, gank in the mid.
All right, Ambition, early game play. Flash Taunt gets the cleanse up. Perkz locks him down with the Rune Prison, takes a lot of damage, but doesn't even use his flash and gets crowns.
Yep, just walks his way out of this one. And again, you bring up the warnings of offensively blown flashes. That is punishable on Galio. You know, he doesn't have a cleanse for himself or anything, but we have to remember how long it takes for Zach to scale up the range on his elastic slingshot. At level 3, it's very short. He needs to get a few more points into that before you get real threat around mid lane. Meanwhile, though, the camera was on bottom lane for a long time for good reason. Oftentimes, Lulu gets to punish the Janna lane early on, and you could see offensively used glitter lances very frequently here from CoreJJ, which set up multiple auto attacks for Ruler to then expunge.
But look at the way the wave is set up right now. This is perfect for G2 because it's not quite underneath the tower, but it's close enough that Ruler and CoreJJ can't afford to be too aggressive because there's the potential for Trick to go for an invade. I think his priority is just stealing away the Krugs. What does he do? Nope, he's going to go back to base.
So no shenanigans yet. As far as Trick's invade goes, going to spot out Ambition, heading back to his chicken. At least the big one, anyway. That's going to be a little bit of an advantage here for G2, as the teleport is used early by Crown.
And again, part of that hesitancy with Zach to go for counter jungling early on, especially without pushing lanes, is the fact that if he jumps over, then Kha'Zix immediately gets to bully him out. And with the bottom lane of Zven and mithy pushed to the turrets, they had no agency on bottom side. Meanwhile, we did get the gank on mid lane against the flashless crowd, but
I love stretching strike.
Not very high impact.
Look at CuVee, look at CuVee.
A fun animation. Rupture's going to catch out Trick. Remember, he's got that Cell Division passive. He's going to be needing to flash away to safety, as CuVee was able to zone him away, and Trick does not want to lose that passive yet.
Ambition was spotted coming in from the bottom half of the jungle, and because he saw him on Perkz, that means that he was forced to flash away. Now he's going to lose a lot of his own chickens. Ambition finally able to steal those away. As we see, Expect pushing up top, now has a window to go back to base. So Samsung, they're utilizing this early Kha'Zix, or the early power of Kha'Zix rather, to take advantage of Trick on this Zach. So far it's working pretty great effect.
We'll see whether or not Ambition can get any more of a lead, right? Because all of our stories and our narrative about Ambition versus Haru, early game versus shot calling, we saw the gold graph as well as how Samsung was able to just accelerate ahead of those 2 team fights you explained, Vedius, and G2. Well, 5 minutes in, this is kind of expected. Small CS deficit in that top lane, as expects Maokai is, going to scale up into that Cho'Gath matchup.
And again, we turn our heads towards the champion select and the preparation of Samsung and how they kind of were able to force Trick onto Zach here with so many of their bans focusing that role. Meanwhile, in the opening game, Trick was such a big part of G2's success on that Sejuani. It was just landing ultimates left and right, constantly engaging, and it seemed like Trick was off to a very good day today. But now on Zach, it's a lot more difficult for him to really create some room. And he is playing catch-up. At least he's got his experience rolling.
But I do think that Trick will still be extremely pivotal in the game to come. Remember that he is the primary engage on G2's side. And as you already talked about, his previous game, he was very impactful. These are just some of his early game stats. His jungle proximity, fairly low in terms of what average we see from the World's Group stage so far, but his kills plus assists is really what you need to focus on.
Yeah, 3 of them at 15, good gold advantage, and one of the playmakers, of course. We'll see what he can do. His Trick is going to be coming out to help. Expect and CuVee, and blow for blow. They trade a sapling toss for a Rupture. Both top laners have access to their ultimates, and again, this is kind of what we expect when you see this type of team composition. Maybe the Kha'Zix can throw in some surprises here and there in the very early game, but you expect Zach to be scaling up. Kog'Maw, Janna, Twitch, Lulu, they want some items. And it's really when we get to that 15 to 20 minute mark and you see Ardent, maybe the first items completed, that things explode. And become very interesting.
The thing is about both comps is they do want to scale, largely because of the AD carries that both teams are playing. Twitch, Kog'Maw, all about 2 to 3 items, all about getting to the late game. Ryze, very similar champion in that he wants to stack up that mana and get things like the Rod of Ages fully stacked. He wants his Archangel Staff. They're all about compositions that just want 2 items before they really try to force anything. But that's what makes things so scary, because G2 are effectively saying, we think we can out-team fight Samsung, and we saw their team fighting power earlier on already.
Terrifying, terrifying, and so could this gank. Ambition set himself up, got that control ward, so he knows he's out of sight, has level 6, access to that Void Assault.
They got wards up the wazoo here in the blue quadrant of G2's jungle. I mean, he's got more than just that one, and they see Trick coming a mile away. Honestly, he could have taken the Drake by now with the Evolve Q once again for Kha'Zix. And the isolation of that objective, his bottom lane pushing, but they just want to mine this entire part of the jungle.
So important because of the engaged distance that the Elastic Slingshot can come in from. Great vision control from Samsung. It allows them to steal that blue buff away. Nobody started the Drake yet. Maybe the fact it's Cloud lowers the importance. However, Ambition, he snuck his way out.
Ryze ultimate's available. I feel like G2 are trying to bait this a little bit.
I think they are.
Let's see whether or not they decide to go in.
They would have to make quick work of Ambition because the Galio ultimate would also be joining though. So it's kind of like, your trap card has activated, my trap card has activated my trap card. And which one explodes first?
Well, whoever gets the Blue Eyes White Dragon, but didn't happen, and we didn't see all of those trap cards played. So no first blood yet, and Ambition continues to play counter jungle, continues to sit, actually live inside G2's jungle, has not left this area for a while. This Trick is going to at least interrupt the Gromp, and it won't be steal.
The reason why Ambition has the freedom to do this, though, is because Perkz is playing reserve as he wants to play defense for Ambition. Crown doesn't have to worry about that because of his ulti, and he has the push in mid, and the bottom lane of G2 is being pushed underneath their tower. So Samsung utilizing this pressure extremely well.
Yeah, it might explode pretty quickly here. Again, pushed him into turret. Oh, we have a recall from Ruler, so it looks like Samsung maybe just giving up on this continued invade.
But Ambition and CoreJJ, they're still sticking around. All right, Gromp, as well as Ambition, tags and stretches. Gromp will not die. Second time he's now regened. By the way, Hurricane picked up for Ruler. Ambition and CoreJJ, they're still not done. The tension continues to build.
A lot of time is being wasted right now as Ruler already on his way back.
Are you kidding me?
And look, now we have Perkz on his way back to base. Crown has moved in through the river. Teleport still available from both top laners. And Trick, he gives up.
That Gromp is just too tanky for Trick, unable to take it down. Leashed about 5 times. Ambition wants to claim the prize, but no! Another challenger approaches.
Oh, come on, let's see. Stretching Strike comes in. That's Stretching Strike 1 and 2. Trick once again resets the Gromp. This is actually getting ridiculous.
I'm on
now.
Team Gromp here. Live forever!
I think Team Gromp is about to lose, CuVee.
No.
Damn it. Jump ship, flip-flop, flip-flop. Get off Team Gromp. That was a very strange passage of play, but what is the net gain or loss here in terms of tempo? Because again, it's a scaling comp. Both junglers and bottom lanes were sort of involved and interrupted. It's a small CS advantage for Zven, but not much more.
So at first, I was like, okay, Ruler's going to get back to base first. Zven hasn't actually gone back yet, so this could be great for Samsung because they'll have their AD carry and support bot first, which means they can start pressuring the tower. But Ruler went back again, along to time his back with CoreJJ. Zven has now just gone back himself, so no real advantages, but now Ambition may be caught out.
All right, let's see how much damage can come down. The entrance comes up, Stretching Strike as well. Not going to be enough to connect. Realm Warp as Perkz is chasing Ambition down, going very eager. Gets the flash out of Ambition, follows up. Rune Prison, Spell Flash, First Blood available to Perkz and G2.
G2 finally get themselves on the board. Perkz is the one to get the kill. Remember what the bottom lane we were talking about. While all this was going on, Ruler and CoreJJ have their eyes set on the tower.
Zven comes back, he clears out a decent portion of that minion wave. And remember, they have to worry about the extra jungle presence now, as Trick cannot be answered. Ambition's still dead for another 3 seconds.
Trick on his way bot. They know that Ambition just died. And this is the risk that you run playing that aggressive. He thought he had the Galio support. He thought he was safe, but he ends up losing his life and giving a pivotal kill over to the mid laner of G2.
Itemization mismatch in this 2v2. Zven still waiting for that Rage Blade to complete, and here's a replay of the engage and ambition.
He's trying to clear the ward. He does have Galio in the mid along with Cho on his way bot. They don't expect Mithy to be around, but the real problem is that Trick holds the two big tanks away from Ambition, and CuVee cannot interrupt the ultimate from Perkz.
Meanwhile, we have the flash in for the execute there, as you already know how this one turns out. But again, I want to return to the earlier play where Ambition double buff Kha'Zix, level either 6 or 7 with Evolve Q already, kind of using a lot of the time of those double buffs, sitting around and just delaying, basically going even net 0 with Trick. Whereas at that time, you could push the advantage. That's a point of power there. At least, the very least could have taken the Drake during that time, but they definitely delayed it, and he's still going to be able to get that prize later. It's just maybe a little bit of a what if, what could have been, small gains.
Nobody activated the trap card. Kobe instead, they're going to get themselves that white dragon. Ambition will secure this one and leap out to safety. But I was mentioning the itemization mismatch. Zven still yet to complete until this very second, that Rage Blade. Mithy had his Ardent Sensor for several minutes, longer than CoreJJ, but now with both Ardents, both first tier on the ADCs. Rod of Ages completed on the side of Perkz, and everybody's continuing to scale up. G2's just got that minor advantage in the itemization game, at least for now.
Comes off the back of that first blood in the middle lane. Perkz haven't completed his Rod of Ages as well, and now we start to see what Trick can do. We talked about how he was going to be one of the pivotal players in the success of G2, especially if they want to play towards those team fights later on. His engages can be the determining factor. And everyone's going to be scaling up. Things are a little bit slow right now, but this is very much how Samsung loves to play.
Dum, 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 dum. Trick gets jumped on. Taste the Fear comes up, but he's able to channel the Elastic Slingshot. That was actually a lot of distance gained. Didn't quite see when he started. Either way, Trick escapes their life once again. Passive still yet to be popped. Going to be a very important tool to keep track of as the fights break out. We'll see whether or not Ruler or Zven can get more damage dealt, because it looks like we're heading to these mid-game team fights as both teams continue to scale.
We got to give credit to Zven as well. We saw how much he was pushed underneath his own tower. Ruler, CoreJJ have a really strong pushing lane. Ambition spent a lot of time hanging around the bottom half of the jungle, yet Zven actually has a CS advantage in the Kog'Maw map.
Oh, this looks like a dive if you've ever seen what people on both sides flanking. They
He's
might
on the
call
wall,
it
though.
off.
Ambition is the one that gets caught out. Oh, the blast cone even gets popped. Good damage because of Perkz being caught out. Hero's entrance will delay Trick. That cell division may get used. Stretching strike comes out. Trick, let's bounce underneath the tower. Now Ambition is killed. Oh, Trick, that was beautiful. CuVee, though, is looking for the rupture. Doesn't want to risk getting engaged upon by Expect. And G2 get their second kill.
What a split right there. Cell division also coming in very handy for Trick as he gets Ambition right under the turret for the extra kill. And that goes very poor for Samsung. Another one turned around by G2. Defensive vision, they see Ambition. It's the same story 2 times around. Ambition on a ward. First one, he knew it was there because it was a control ward, but second time around, G2 make the long range counter.
He thought that he would be safe with Crown hanging around. He has the ultimate to dive in, give him that damage reduction. But again, Mithy is here to provide that extra bit of damage, that extra bit of utility. And while Perkz does get zoned away, yeah, I mean, he literally comes in shield and then backs off again. Great Janna play, good job. You've done everything you need to. Yeah, he did. I believe it does get interrupted there from Perkz, but as you said, Trick drags him underneath the tower, is able to get the kill, and CuVee can't really assist.
Yeah, Trick not playing fair. A little bit of tower defense there to help him out. Picking up the second kill, and G2, 1,200 gold lead. It's not a lot as we're getting close to the 20-minute mark.
What should be noted after that play as well is Expect did use the teleport there on Maokai, I believe, to come down and answer it. So that is something you have to watch out for. Not only is it a Galio team, but 2 teleports are available for Samsung. So they very well could pull off one of those big plays and try and get a team wipe or something.
Also, look at the magic resistance available for Samsung. They're going to try and get a collapse on the Crown.
All right, interrupts the Justice Punch. Crown gets rooted in place, but look, there's literally no damage. Going through the Galio passive, the MR that he's built up with his items as well.
Yeah, we should see Hex Shrinkers coming through. We should see all kinds of magic resist, getting a lot of value there for the Samsung squad. Right now, Ambition is in enemy territory, but he has been there quite often.
Yeah, he really has. Void Assault just to get to safety, and Ambition kind of being maybe read a little bit by G2. Feels like they're responding to his play and his presence.
Read by the light of wards. Makes it a bit easier there, and on all of these invades, a lot of extra vision given.
Kha'Zix as well, hanging off to the side, clearing out some of the warding from Samsung so that he can set up one of those sneaky ganks. Something you've always got to respect from Galio is the creative paths he can take with how he gets into the lane and sets up his laners for a couple kills. But the game will start to get harder now for G2 with the items being completed for Samsung. They're going to have to find these creative ways of making these fights happen and getting onto the priority targets of Ruler and Ambition.
Yeah, I have a very small accolade to award to Ruler. He's just dealt more damage to champions than he did in his entire game against RNG. It's 2,700, and truthfully, the game hasn't even started yet. We're entering Samsung Galaxy territory. They get tower first blood. They've got a gold lead. We're entering the mid game. And now G2 really have to show that they can go toe-to-toe with Samsung in, their comfort zone.
Yeah, so just as we're expecting a lot of magic resist build from Samsung, you'd also expect stuff like the Wit's End for a Kog'Maw to start shredding that sort of magic resist. That plus a Hurricane, you can shred on multiple targets. Other things like the Abyssal Mask can come through to amplify their magic damage. So there are a little bit of ways of balance that they can try and push through longer, and it's not like they are going to run out of options super early on, but we'll see if Samsung are going to let them push up at all here.
Also keeping minds on the early Void Staff from Perkz. We've got to bring our attention now to the Rift Herald. Started off by CuVee. Expect does not have the teleport, so Samsung feel confident, but they do know that Trick can see them starting it.
All right, fighting over Rift Herald. Vision in favor of Samsung in the river, but that Rift Herald helping out, of course. Crown once again not taking a lick of damage from Perkz and Trick. And the Herald continues to chase Ambition. This game is going to be defined by how many jungle camps Ambition can reset.
The Ocean Drake has just spawned. Baron going to be spawning in about 40 seconds, so don't even know if Ambition can kill this fast enough, especially with the hanging around of G2, but they're going to try and commit to it now.
All right, G2's not really close enough to contest this time. Instead, expect pushing down bottom. Remember, no, he does have teleport available. Excuse me. Was available there and is secured. All right, so Samsung, they already have a tower. They already have themselves the Cloud Drake, and now with the Rift Herald, see whether or not they can utilize that to unlock another lane. Traditionally, can be used mid. Who's got it in the inventory? It's Ambition, and trying to track where he's going. Deciding where he's going to go next, but Samsung very happy, very content to keep playing this game. Play the scaling game.
Yeah, I mean, both teams are quite happy to play the scaling game. We talked about how Kog'Maw and Ryze scale very nicely. It's just the fact that Samsung arguably scale better. It's going to come down to how both these teams play these fights and who can get that initial engage, but also whether or not Ruler can find a pick. It feels like G2, they are respecting it. They've played against Reckless enough. They know what it's like to play against that kind of Twitch.
Yeah, I think it is definitely going to be very important if Trick is going to be able to land an Elastic Slingshot onto Ruler to try and disrupt some of that damage. Currently, Rift Herald used in the mid lane for the execute on the turret, but it's probably just going to be sacrificed after that as Perkz can clean him up.
Yeah, very easy in that regard. But Samsung 2 towers now. And they're well into this team fight stage. Samsung going to start off their second dragon of the game. Will secure themselves the Ocean. And G2 Esports now going to, again, live up to the ultimate test. Continue to wait for those item spikes. I mentioned earlier that for G2, the destiny's in their own hands, of course. They have to win out. If Samsung win this game, they guarantee themselves a spot in the quarterfinal. So a lot to play for on the side of Samsung as well.
I was just about to echo that sentiment. Very important game for both these teams, and it's crucial to say that G2, this game, their fate is in their own hands. If they win the game, then they are still within contention of making quarterfinals. But if they lose, they might be able to get the tiebreaker, but it's all dependent on the rest of the day's results.
Nobody wants to rely on that scenario.
Oh, he's gonna get it.
All right, Ruler, Flash and Barrier is available. Stealth away, so that's at least a flash blown. So G2, the window is now open. You have a few minutes to try to do that again.
And probably the most important flash blown. The only other one that might be as important would be CoreJJ's, because we talked about, the significance of killing the enemy's Ardent Sensor holder, but having Ruler splash down is very important. So both teams are going to have their eyes on that priority now. Samsung going to try and keep it safe, whereas G2 going to try and and focus.
Got to look at the item difference too, because at first I thought, oh, maybe Zven just hasn't gone back at base. But if we bring up the gold, you can see that Ruler actually has a pretty significant advantage just because of the isolated towers that he's been picking up across the map. He's been getting those last hits, and the fact that he's already now completed his Infinity Edge and just spent his gold, I imagine he's bought something like a Last Whisper. Ruler is looking pretty terrified.
Exactly what he has purchased. So 2.5 items for Ruler. Not yet got a completed second item for Zven, though he's got enough money. Perkz, on the other hand, Void Staff picked up. Crown got all the masks, whichever ones you want, got both of them. And Righteous Glories for both top laners. So all of those engaged tools, all of those power. Vidius, we're setting ourselves up for another week 1 style game.
Exactly.
Where it can come down to one team fight around Baron, one team fight around a Dragon maybe, and all of a sudden a team will skyrocket ahead.
Yeah, and I struggle to see how Zven will be able to get through these tanks. Adaptive Helm is just so good against Kog'Maw because it reduces magic damage from the same source. And the thing about Kog'Maw is his W does so much magic damage. Yes, it scales with percentage health, but it is magic, which means that Adaptive Helm is extremely effective at dealing with Kog later into the game.
Oh, Ruler's hiding. Not going to be able to find mithy yet. Continues to pull back. All right, Samsung, very clearly focused this top outer turret, the last one remaining. G2 are still 1,000 gold behind with standing gold. Remember, they've not taken a single tower yet. So if G2 can win, even just a skirmish, it'll open up 1 or 2 of those objectives. The Hurricane on Zven will help out in some of these team fights. Just rinse and repeat for Samsung. They use the stealth of that Twitch Kha'Zix combination to try to eliminate or assassinate somebody on G2.
Samsung using the pressure extremely well to gain vision around the Baron area. Just look at all these control wards along the river. It means that G2 feels so afraid of getting close to this objective that there's the threat of it being rushed down as Trick takes a bit of damage.
He does indeed. Once again, a battle over the chickens.
Yeah, Samsung actually commit to this skirmish in the jungle rather than finishing off that top turret. You know, if it goes down to minions, then you lose a little bit of gold as the local gold doesn't go to anybody in particular. Ruler actually with a fairly risky open onto Perkz.
I mean, he has no flash.
Got barrier and wild growth to play with. Little leap over the wall. Trick decides to let's bounce towards Crown. Crown's gonna look for that Duran. Flash forward for the taunt. Here comes Kha'Zix. Ambition unable to find the kill. Zven trying to hammer away. Now mithy's taken down. Zven continues to run for his life. The Akakian surprise might be able to pick one up. Decides to peel backwards. Perkz needs to clean up the damage. Ruler, if he gets spotted, the damage is there. Spell Flux and Overloads continue to pound down as Expect completes the teleport. CuVee decides to rush in. Realm Warp goes out. That gets them out. That's going to be the passive onto Trick, and G2 gets smashed.
Ambition living the Kha'Zix dream there. Galio ult comes down. He uses his own ultimate to gain invisibility. Also gets the Lulu wild growth. Survives, gets out after killing both members of G2's backline, and now they're onto the Baron. Oh, is the dream over?
Ambition's in so much trouble. Nature's Grasp thrown down from Expect. Importantly, Baron has been stopped, and G2 haven't even lost a member. I may have to regret that in a moment, as Expect is forced to flash to safety. Flash forward for Perkz. Ruler gets caught. Rune Prison down. Perkz continues to chase out. Gets taunted on the way out, I think. Not able to chase anything further. G2 Esports lucky to not lose that Baron as well.
Lucky is exactly the word for it, Quick Shot. That was such a great fight for Samsung Galaxy. They had everything going for them in terms of the setup, the execution, and how to finish it off. It only could have been better if they secured that Baron, but Ambition, he was not expecting Perkz to be on the sideline. He gets chunked out, and he's the main reason why Samsung couldn't secure that objective.
Some quick reactions by Ambition there, but also the members of Samsung supporting him and playing around their captain. Definitely huge change right there as far as the face of this game. All right, let's take a quick breather after that, and we can all revel in Ambition's greatness.
Just phenomenal, and again, it's just flashbacks of the week 1 performance where it came down to fights around Baron, fights around the mid lane, and Samsung won those fights, and then they won the game.
Yes, they did. Great TLDR.
Yes. Thank you, Vidius.
You're welcome.
But now G2, their backs are against the wall. They're down 2,000 gold. They are surely going to be experiencing those flashbacks, much like we are. So how do they dig themselves out of this hole, Vidius?
I don't know. I think we talked a lot about it during the
Venice,
draft.
you've got to have a plan, man. How will you save Europe?
A lot of magic damage on the side of G2. I feel like a bit of a broken record. I don't want to keep saying it, but it is just so important because we saw how difficult it was for the G2 lineup to really shred through the front line. Now, in fairness to G2, it was crowned with a great initiation taunt to start off that whole fight. And when we get the replay up, we can look at exactly why Samsung were able to get that optimal setup. But initially, it's like G2 trying to find a pick, trying to make something happen, and then Samsung with the initiation to turn things around.
Yeah, so let's look at how it all started out. You know, Trick ultimate there is dodged by Ambition using the leap, and then here's the crown initiation you're talking about. By himself, he almost chunks Mithy and Zven down to 50%, gets the Janna ult out as well. That leaves Mithy an easy target. Ambition activates his Void Assault, so he gets that extra visibility, buying him time enough to also kill off the Kog'Maw, and the wild growth enables him to survive and even exit the fight.
And Perkz is doing so much damage, but there's always a tank in his way.
Yep.
He can't actually commit to Ruler because Crown is just standing in his face and just making his life as difficult as possible. You can't land skill shots if there's just this giant-ass Colossus dude just standing in the way being like, no, I'm going to keep my guys alive.
And they've actually got two giant-ass dudes to stand in front of him. Ambition jumped over and he got a quick wink at him, but again, comes in, Crown's going to block off any sort of DPS that he could put out, and it's one of the things that people talk about with Ryze always, you know, how you can't block a lot of those skill shots. Then they have this little okey doke there where they're all scrambled back out, and Crown makes another good distraction to allow Ruler to walk his way out.
Man, Crown just doing so much work on that Galio. We talked about in picks and bans. The pick and ban strategy from Samsung, targeting the jungle pool of Trick, seems to be working out. And while we continue to investigate this pause, I have been informed from the referees on stage that players have been given permission to discuss and chat. I don't yet have a reasoning as to what the cause of the pause is, or we'll update you in a moment or two. But there's just so much tension and pressure on this stage, and G2 Esports backs now against the wall, reliant on maybe punishing a mistake or finding that perfect engage. If Trick can somehow get an elastic slingshot or Perkz can get a good realm warp, you saw how much damage he was dealing. You know, he can potentially combo down Ruler's Twitch.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about how these fights are played out. And remember that for G2, this game pretty much decides whether or not they're able to get to the quarterfinals. It's been their year-long plan, their year-long goal. They had a struggling spring split, but they ended on a high. And Samsung, they were kind of in a similar position where they went into the gauntlet. They did struggle towards the end, but they were still able to qualify for the World Championships. And both these teams have kind of had rough splits, but have been able to grow and reach this point. And now you have two very similar styles that are clashing against each other, but it just feels like that so far in this tournament, Samsung have been able to better execute that style.
Yeah, the execution, plus in this game in particular, the setup to it and the itemization that we keep harping on. Another thing that's important here, Ruler has you know, recognized the amount of healing that's on the enemy team. Already there's always a lot of healing, you know, floating around in Ardent Sensor meta because those are the supports. But in addition, Zac and Maokai, it's really important that you can apply Grievous Wounds when you're getting to that team fight phase. So, you know, he picked up an early Mortal Reminder and is already upgraded. So it does seem like there are a lot of the answers already kind of in place here for Samsung, and that's why, even though it's not the biggest gold lead, we are a bit worried for G2, and you're trying to look for ways for them to try and make something happen.
As you can see those team comps on your screen right now, one caveat that we've not really touched on a huge amount is if somehow G2 Esports can find Ruler, it's going to be very difficult for Ambition to have enough damage to clean out a team fight.
For sure.
So that's definitely a risky place to be in. And we'll find out whether or not these teams can. While legal officials do continue to work on the issue on stage, we're going to head over to the analyst desk.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. An opportunity here to talk a little bit about the game as league officials investigate reports of a network issue on stage. We'll update as updates become available. But as we pull Champions Select up onto the screen, I want to turn to you guys because immediately following this Champions Select, some of you were wishing you had changed your predictions or could roll them back. The flip-floppers, let's hear it.
She's the double flip-flopper. She wanted off the train.
This isn't the blame
This
game.
guy is actually a professional flip-flopper. You are a
And
fair
I'm so
weather
good at
analyst.
it that I can point it out when someone does it twice.
Right. Yeah,
I feel
there
like
it is.
Jat's flip-flop literally started in the first round of picks. He was always like, oh, I don't know about this. And
It
by the end,
started when I woke
Responsibility.
up and ate pancakes.
Well, I can definitely
both
tell when it
sides.
started for me, though.
All
It
right.
was when they didn't lock in Tristana. I think you said it best. I totally agreed with you. I felt that Tristana was such a huge pick for G2 because it allowed them to open up the map, to snowball these beautiful gold leads when they started bouncing around, taking down turrets, and then pushing into their mid game. So I saw the Kog'Maw get locked in. I was like, no, the Tristana was available. They had every single option.
Right, so there's a lot going on in this draft phase, and we saw this draft, and I also didn't necessarily like it from G2, but I understand exactly what they're going for, because from a stylistic perspective, the first time they played Samsung, they said, we're not going to beat Samsung in an outscale, we have to go with an early game strategy. They put the Ardent Sensor on Ivern, they tried to play Alistair, that didn't work. And Samsung looked super slow and like they couldn't make anything happen. So this draft, I think the goal of it was to outlast Samsung since they wouldn't make plays in the early game. The nuance, though, comes in the execution. Do they actually have a better late-game team composition? This is something we've been talking about the entire game.
And I think the nuance is kind of extended from there also, because also you have to consider, how are we winning our games? What are we doing to win at this tournament? And to me, like you say, Frostgreen, it was rotate early with the turret destroyer, the Tristana, and make those sort of tempo plays, couple of turrets down, put teams in that position enough times, they will lose, just like we saw in our earlier game today with RNG. So not playing to how you were winning and rather playing to the theory is a risk, and you are opting into late game against Samsung. Just talking about the draft, it's one of those weird ones where you want to say G2, you want to say outscale, but I feel like that's kind of an overused term, especially here, because Galio's team fighting and how much space control you can get with double adaptive helm frontline against Kog'Maw cannot be denied.
Yeah, like the itemization, because it is so predominantly magic heavy on G2's composition, is in favor for Samsung. That said, I think Trevor actually said it best right before they threw to us. If you can find that Twitch, and they do have tons of backline threat between the Maokai, between the Zac, even the Ryze, get him and pop him, the only other big damage threat then is Ambition. And Kha'Zix will start to teeter off a little bit versus like the Cho and the Galio. So there are execution options. I just think it's far easier for Samsung's composition to be successful.
Yep.
And I think there's a lot of this game that will come down to execution and the small choices. But when we double back on the theory, if you're going to have the theory of a better late game team composition, get your items right. Because I feel like Perkz and G2 are building objectively wrong in this game. Abyssal Mask Ryze versus Rod of Ages Ryze, even in one-on-one scenarios when you're in aura range, does roughly 92 to 98% of the damage of a Roa Ryze if you have an Abyssal Mask. But they have Zac, Maokai, and Kog'Maw, and there's 2 magic damage solo lanes on the enemy team. It is not even close of whether or not the Abyssal Mask is correct. Add that on top of the fact that they're now no longer getting the magic damage shred aura for the rest of their team. The correct itemization is being done on Samsung's side with 2 adaptive helms to reduce the damage from the Kog'Maw and the Ryze. So in that way, I think it's helping Samsung bully G2, at least in these early stages of the game.
All right, well, the teams will most likely be playing through this networking issue. We're not going to head back just yet. A little bit more time to talk. But Jet, before the game we talked about for G2, right? The way that they won earlier today was getting those small advantages with the turret coming down early and then playing properly and adjusting their pressure to the rest of the lanes. This time around, though, they've essentially conceded the entirety of the map pressure and seem to be playing more towards the style that we would have expected out of Samsung Galaxy.
Yeah.
What's going on there, though?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a matter of, yes, you have your own way of winning, but you also have the way the opponent likes to win.
Okay.
And this one for G2 is having faith in their own flexibility and trying to punish what they see as inflexibility in Samsung, is what I see.
And Samsung haven't necessarily played a lot of these Galio comps. If this was Longzhu, it's almost a god-tier Longzhu comp because they love to have BDD playing the Galio. Twitch, Kalista was a big pick in the LCK before its permaban here. Katie Rolster also loved these comps, which are so strong in the early to mid-game. For Samsung, I think it papers over some of their weaknesses because CuVee and CoreJJ aren't going to be called out when there's Galio to factor in. And to me, the Galio is the part that puts up. It's only, I believe, 4th competitive game for Crown on Galio. He's a Johnny-come-lately on the Galio, but it does paper over some of these early to mid-game weaknesses and guarantees sort of that, hey, it's probably going to be a 35 to 45-minute game if both teams are okay with that.
It actually also puts so much emphasis on Ambition to be the primary engage in
Sure.
tandem with that Galio. Because you look at, Cho, Galio, Twitch, they're so reliant on Kha'Zix stealthing in, getting the massive cannonball ultimate. So G2, I hope that they don't just run face first and let that kind of engage happen, especially when Twitch is up, ready, and has his itemization, because they have so many other options, like using the Ryze ultimate or using the Ryze mobility to kind of sculpt or engineer, you know, superior fights for themselves, because they have all of the engage tools.
And that's the thing is, engage is almost a dirty word for Samsung. They'd rather not be engaging. They'd happy to let G2 engage.
Yep.
And if you have the tempo, remember, they have a pushing draft, they have globals, they'll get the deep wards, they'll start the objectives and say, come to us, we'll find a way to counter-engage. So sure, they don't want to start up straight fights. If they're behind, they cannot force things to start. But when they're ahead, which this comp should be, they're in complete control and waiting for G2 to be a bit over-eager to make a mistake.
Now, League officials are testing the network on stage to make sure it meets competitive standards before we continue, so given a few more moments for them to test that out. In the meantime, I want to take a look at the most recent fight in this game around the Baron from a G2 disengage.
Yeah, and this is something that Samsung can do at this stage in the game because they have an early pressure advantage right now with all the lane priority from Galio and the lack of strong penetration and multipliers on the other side. So they make this engage because G2 got a little ambitious in the beginning.
And consider what Ambition's role is in team fights. You think, okay, there's a tanky front line, what will he do? Honestly, he waits for Monsoon, says that's probably going to be a Janna isolated, tries to just kill the Janna. And if he can trade his life for Janna's, that's not bad for the side of Samsung.
Yeah, he couldn't have played that team fight better, making sure that he was constantly getting out to the flanks. And like you said, as soon as the primary disengage of Janna is down, he's constantly peeking in and out, looking for these big burst damage targets.
And the fact that Samsung didn't actually turn this into a Baron is a miraculous hold from G2. Watch Ambition right here. Blast coning over and Perkz catches him. If he can actually make it into the back of the pit and hide behind the tanks, that Baron is secured. So a miraculous hold there by Perkz and Expect to not give over Baron. With Baron, I think Samsung's win chances go from about 60% to 80% from that point.
But it's a question about what does that stall actually buy them, because Samsung could just rinse, wash, and repeat and do the same play over again and get probably better results this time around. That said, if that Baron goes down, I agree with you, the game will then end right there. But even if G2 get it, is it enough to stall out? Because we do have these questions, you know, which composition is actually better post 45, 55 minutes?
Now, Jack, you already mentioned some easy fixes for the side of G2 in the itemization. Unfortunately, we can't convey that information to them. So, accepting the fact that the items probably won't change, what can G2 do from this game state, from this point in the game, to kind of turn things around and give you more confidence in their ability to take the win?
They have to keep playing mistake-free. Every death is a chance that Baron goes over to Samsung, and they can move into a turret with Galio channeling taunt with Twitch chilling it. And there won't be an initiation option for them. But as long as they can keep Baron away from Samsung, there's a chance that they reach that 35-minute point, because I think at 55 minutes, Twitch will actually outscale the Kog'Maw. That 35 to 40-minute point where Zach can get a good initiation onto a flashless Twitch and evade the Galio ultimate. That's so narrow, and it's one of the reasons I don't like the draft.
And I think it also kind of has to be a delta or a difference between making no mistakes and Samsung finally making a mistake of their own, because sure, Zach can jump really far and initiate. Everyone knows that. But when is he going to get the go signal? When will they have enough vision? When will they catch, say, Ambition on a ward again? Those sort of scenarios in the late game are so much less likely. That is where teams will be together, will be grouped up. So actually getting the dream initiation, kidnapping the Twitch to the front line, killing him first, realistically, that should never happen in this game.
Which is why you need to put a magnifying glass on the vision, specifically the defensive vision from Samsung, so Zach can't get a good flank or can't get behind them, and the offensive denial of vision from G2, so they can orchestrate that beautiful engagement, reach that backline, and pop that Twitch.
Now, on the side of Samsung Galaxy, granted the game isn't over yet, does this do anything to assuage some of the concerns around their play for the day? I mean, the fact that they are playing a relatively clean game up to this point?
I honestly feel like we should ask these two, because the flip-floppers could flip-flop one more time, surely.
All right, never mind. We're out of time because the teams are ready to get back into the game. League officials have resolved the issue on stage, and play will continue from the time of the pause. Let's get back to the casters and get into game.
Saved by the bell.
Yes.
Oh, I love how feisty the analyst desk is today. Just before we jump into the game, just a quick reminder, of course, that normally during pauses, players are not allowed to talk to keep the competitive integrity in place. However, when pauses will be longer than traditionally 5 minutes, or if it is expected to be longer than that, of course, we do allow the teams to talk. And that was what happened here. So our network technicians have jumped on stage, have tested the configurations, and we will be playing through. So we'll keep our eyes on how this progresses. And as we jump back into the game state, G2 Esports narrowly avoided the Baron being secured by Samsung Galaxy, and it was largely due to Expect and Perkz having good flanking opportunities and preventing Samsung.
And some things we saw in that fight were fairly worrying for G2, right? So much of the talk about this game is going to be about the draft phase and the magic, focus of this team comp. You can see 2 long swords in Sven's inventory right now. We would assume that those would turn into a Blade of the Ruin King, which would allow him a possibility of cutting through those tanks, but that is still a fairly long ways off. And we saw the ineffectiveness of Perkz against those tanks and how Crown could just basically stand in front of him and negate all of his effectiveness.
Now, just look at the mini-map, because we can see that Ryze has been sent to the bottom lane to deal with CuVee. Expect is in the top side, but that's where the teleport is. Perkz cannot very quickly translate over, and given some of the vision that Samsung was setting up, I thought there was the possibility of them rushing the Baron, but now you'll see Crown pushing up top. That will give him a window to either force that top tower or move back towards the Baron.
Yeah, I think Samsung, the top tower is very low, and they should be able to knock over that turret and get some relatively free money. There's not a lot of power up on the top side for G2, so this should be easy. Then you have to worry about the Ocean Drake and the Baron both available right now, and will one of these be traded? It's like G2 can't really make a play for an objective for setting up around one while the other exists, because Samsung has priority right now.
Yeah, of course, Ambition leap away to safety. Stretching Strike comes out.
Oh!
Ambition towards the Baron pit. Expect and Mithy looking for an option. Righteous Glory was used. Let's Bounce was used. And if G2 get forced into a fight, that could be very important.
That was kind of weird from Drake. I could understand what he wanted to do. Expect to even use the Righteous Glory. However, he threw himself into the pit and had to use his ultimate to actually get out of that situation that he was put in. So now one of those engage tools is unavailable for G2. Samsung feel even more confident to go towards the Drake. And now their only options are to just clear out some of the vision, but they're not even pushing it into the river right now.
All right, Duskblade was picked up by Ambition a little while ago, got his hands on that BF sword, likely going towards that GA. 3 items for Ruler, has had that for a little while, as we discussed during the pause, Kobe. Cut through that healing on Ruler's Twitch, and he's just completed the Mercury Treads while on the screen popped up. Obviously, Crown is sitting on that locket, so item spikes in favor of Samsung Galaxy. Easier to execute team fights in favor of Samsung Galaxy. Do everything you can to keep Ruler alive. That's really
pretty much it.
The aim of the game. And if you're an EULCS fan or a G2 supporter, and you're hoping that Trick and Perkz can somehow find the angle on that very sneaky Rex.
It's going to be extremely difficult for them to do it, but G2 have pulled these kind of performances off before. CuVee now looking for a knockup.
Yeah, G2 don't really want to fight until Zven can finish that Blade of the Ruin King. Otherwise, the giant men, as you were calling them, I believe, Quickshot or something like that, on the front line are going to be so difficult to get through. And Samsung kind of just get the run of Summoner's Rift right now. So they're pushing G2 around, getting some deep vision, and they really want to take advantage of this opportunity to try and force something around the Baron, clearing out as many of the wards as possible.
It's 3,500 gold lead as we crest 30 minutes in favor of Samsung Galaxy.
Ooh.
Ruler's running down with Spray and Pray. Summoner Heal is used. Ruler's not done yet. Continues to use that ultimate to fire through G2 Esports. Now Ruler, Wild Growth and Spray and Pray used. Redemption gonna land. Heals up Zven. Look at the backline. Expect and throw down Nature's Grasp. Trick forced to flash defensively, but Perkz, he's soloed up. He's tasting Ambition's fear. Gets to safety with the Realm Warp. Nobody's died yet. CuVee escapes with his life as CoreJJ continues to run. Now Crown left alone, 1v5. Hell, he probably could have survived in that scenario. Regardless, G2 live.
What a chaotic fight. Nobody ends up going down, but a lot of summoner spells will use G2 there on the offensive.
They are indeed stretching. Strike falls short as Ambition continues to escape. G2 Esports, they're starting Baron.
Extremely risky. TP is up for Crown and CuVee, and G2 started it off.
All right, Zven continues to spit living artillery, firing for days. Flashes backwards, not available. Here comes CuVee, he's teleported in. Rupture finds no target. Ruler is looking closer and closer to that Spray and Pray. And Baron enlisted by Samsung Galaxy to tag Perkz on the way out.
Yeah, Perkz is getting so low right here. They're going to have to actually pull off of this one. Ambition, solo mission here to cut around. Now he's got a little bit of support, though.
Oh, this is so scary for G2. All of a sudden, Samsung have got positioning on the Baron. Recall interrupted by Perkz, and Samsung, They're pushing through the jungle and the mid lane.
Look at the mid. Expect is going to answer, but G2 are the ones in the awkward position. Sven!
Oh, Zven gets chunked out, burst out, blown up. Crown takes him out. Trick is next on the list. Manages to get Let's Bounce, takes Ambition over the wall. The tower not going to be enough to kill this time round. And Zven with no flash gets eaten alive.
The patience pays off. Ambition slips into, oh, Ruler now!
Not done yet. Ruler all of a sudden continues to move forward. Trick gets the elastic slingshot, bounces away to safety, but that was a flash blown from Perkz, and Samsung can use this to their advantage.
They're running straight towards the Baron. Ruler's still alive. CuVee and Ambition are set up for success. Remember, you have the ulti from CuVee too. Let's see if Trick can get here in time.
Specs trying to run down CoreJJ. Luckily, the Warmogs will heal Trick back up to HP, but this is so difficult. Round Warp will deliver Perkz into the area of the pit. Jumps in from Trick. Smite fight. Samsung securing, but that was oh so close. Trick will get popped into Cell Division. There's not enough firepower to save his life, and Samsung 6k gold and Baron are 1 win away from the quarterfinals.
Trick came so close to securing that Baron with his smite, but it was CuVee that gets it in the end. Samsung have the amazing fight. They very quickly transition that into a Baron, and now they're the ones in control of the game. G2 haven't even been able to get a tower this game so far, and it's the Samsung team fight that's coming out on top.
On top of it all, Cell Division for Trick also not going to be available for their last-ditch effort trying to defend at the inhibitor turrets. Here come the Baron up Samsung. I mean, this one, he's going for the steal against a Cho'Gath ultimate as well as the smite, and he almost got it in spite of how stacked the odds were against him.
70 health was left on that.
And something
Baron.
tagged it for another 68. 70, then 2, then Feast. At the end of the day, Samsung secure the Baron. Man, what a difficult scenario. Now G2 have to do something that only Korean teams have been able to do at Worlds. Bounce back from a gigantic deficit. And the odds are not in their favor.
We talked so much about the composition and how Zven has really struggled to get through this front line. In that last fight, G2, they just did no damage, even though